I smiled through everything, and nobody saw me breaking. That is one of the loneliest sentences I have ever said out loud, because it tells the truth about a kind of pain that often goes unnoticed for years. I did not fall apart in public. I did not scream for help. I did not stop functioning. I kept showing up. I kept answering messages. I kept making dinner. I kept going to work. I kept remembering birthdays, smiling in photos, saying, "I'm fine," asking other people how they were doing, and carrying myself like someone who still had everything under control. That is why no one saw it. I had become so good at holding myself together on the outside that almost nobody realized how much of me was quietly collapsing on the inside. I think that is the tragedy for a lot of women. We do not always break loudly. We break politely. We break while still being useful. We break while still remembering things, still caring for people, still being kind, still being the one others rely on. We break in ways that are easy to miss because they do not interrupt the lives of the people around us right away. If anything, we often become more composed when we are hurting most. We become more skilled at smiling, more practiced at downplaying, more automatic in our caregiving, more determined not to become one more problem for anyone else to handle. And because the world responds more easily to women who remain manageable even in pain, our suffering becomes easy to overlook. That was my life for longer than I knew. I do not think I even understood at first that I was breaking. I thought I was just tired, just stressed, just going through a difficult season. I told myself everyone feels overwhelmed sometimes. Everyone gets emotionally stretched. Everyone has periods where they feel off. And all of that is true. But what was happening inside me was deeper than a hard week or a stressful month. Something in me was wearing down from carrying too much for too long without enough room to be honest about it. I was smiling because I did not know what else to do. Smiling kept things moving. Smiling kept people comfortable. Smiling protected me from questions I did not know how to answer. There is a kind of smile that is not joy at all. It is social protection. It is emotional makeup. It says, "Don't worry about me." It says, "I am still functioning." It says, "You do not need to stop your day for this." It says, "I can carry it." And if you wear that smile often enough, people begin to believe it completely. They assume you are stronger than you feel, more stable than you are, less affected than you really are. They stop looking closely because your face has become so skilled at reassuring them. Meanwhile, inside, your thoughts get darker, your energy gets thinner, your patience gets weaker, your hope gets more fragile, and your sense of self starts to feel strangely far away. I know now that one of the reasons nobody saw me breaking is because I made breaking look too graceful. I stayed pleasant. I stayed efficient. I stayed emotionally useful to others even when I no longer felt emotionally safe inside myself. I could still listen to someone else's pain while ignoring my own. I could still show compassion while privately running on emptiness. I could still answer, still organize, still care, still be thoughtful, still make life easier for other people. And because I was still doing all of that, no one thought to ask whether the woman doing it was slowly coming apart. The truth is, I did not want people to ask too many questions. That matters. Part of me wanted to be seen, yes. But another part was deeply committed to staying easy to love, easy to depend on, easy to be around. I had spent so long being the calm one, the kind one, the one who could hold a room together, that I did not know how to become visibly fragile without feeling like I was failing at being myself. I had built an identity around steadiness, around emotional control, around being the one who did not make everything heavier. So when life inside me started getting heavier, I did what I had always done. I concealed it, softened it, managed it, smiled over it. I think many women are trained for this kind of concealment. We learn how to stay pleasant even when we are disappointed, how to stay warm even when we are exhausted, how to stay composed even when we are drowning in private. We learn that other people often respond better to us when we are digestible, when our pain is quiet, when our needs are not disruptive, when our emotions arrive in ways others can comfortably absorb. So we adapt. We present the version of our struggle that will not cost us connection. But there is a terrible price in that adaptation. The more carefully you package your pain for other people's comfort, the less likely they are to understand how real it actually is. I remember days when I was barely making it through emotionally and still found myself smiling in places where I should have been resting. Someone would ask how I was, and I would say, "Good," automatically, or "just tired," or "busy." Those answers were not exactly lies, but they were not the truth either. The truth was harder and less tidy. The truth was that I felt emotionally crowded by my own life. The truth was that I had become so used to carrying that I no longer knew how to tell the difference between strength and collapse. The truth was that I had been giving, absorbing, adjusting, and enduring for so long that something inside me had started going dim. But how do you say that casually? How do you say, "I am disappearing in a way no one can see because I am still doing all the things I'm supposed to do"? That is one of the cruelest parts of invisible breaking. You often do not feel entitled to it. You tell yourself other people have it worse. You tell yourself you are still functioning, so how bad can it really be? You tell yourself that because there has been no public disaster, maybe what you are feeling is not serious enough to name. But pain does not become less real because it is quiet. A woman can be deeply unwell emotionally while still appearing responsible and composed. In fact, sometimes the more composed she appears, the longer it takes everyone, including her, to realize how much she is suffering. My breaking looked like constant emotional overextension. It looked like being everybody's safe place while not having one of my own. It looked like crying in private and sounding normal in public. It looked like answering texts I did not have the energy for because I could not bear to seem absent. It looked like showing up to obligations with a smile that felt disconnected from my actual body. It looked like making people feel comfortable while my own mind felt increasingly loud and tired. It looked like staying organized while growing more internally fragmented. It looked like saying, "I'm okay," so many times that even I stopped knowing what okay would feel like. There were signs, of course. There are always signs. But subtle suffering is easy to explain away. I was more irritable than I used to be, more tired, more detached. Sometimes even when good things happened, I could not fully feel them. My joy felt thinner, my patience felt shorter, my body felt heavier, my mind felt noisier. But none of it looked dramatic enough to interrupt my life, so I kept going. That is what so many people do. They keep going because going looks easier than stopping to admit the truth. Stopping might require honesty. It might require help. It might require change. It might require disappointing people who have grown comfortable with your constant availability. And I was terrified of disappointing people. Not in some childish way, but in the deeper emotional way that develops when you have spent years being valued for your strength. I knew how to be the one others leaned on. I did not know how to become the one who said, "I can't do this the way I've been doing it anymore." I did not know how to let people see me messy, raw, uncertain, emotionally tired. So I kept performing wellness long after wellness had left the room. That performance is exhausting in a very specific way, not only because you are hurting, but because you are using energy to hide the fact that you are hurting. You are managing your own pain and other people's perception of it at the same time. You are trying to survive the day and remain emotionally readable to others in the right way. That is a terrible burden. And if you carry it long enough, eventually the gap between your outer self and your inner reality becomes almost unbearable. I think that is when the deepest loneliness set in for me. Not loneliness from being alone. Loneliness from being unseen while surrounded. Loneliness from being treated as though I were okay because I had become so skilled at appearing okay. Loneliness from realizing that the version of me most people interacted with was not false, exactly, but incomplete. They were getting my functioning self, my usable self, my socially acceptable self. But the woman underneath that, tired, overwhelmed, aching, questioning, close to breaking, had almost no place to fully arrive. There were moments when I wanted someone to notice without me having to explain. I wanted someone to hear the strain in my voice, to see the exhaustion behind the smile, to understand that I was not just busy or a little stressed. I wanted someone to say, "No, really, how are you?" But I also know now that I had made that hard. I had spent years reassuring the world with my face. I had spent years proving that I could handle things. I had spent years reducing my truth to something digestible. So when the breaking got worse, the people around me were still responding to the woman I had trained them to expect. That realization is painful, because it means part of my invisibility had my own fingerprints on it. Not because I wanted to suffer alone, because I did not know another way. I did not know how to interrupt the pattern. I did not know how to tell the truth before my pain became impossible to hide. I did not know how to say, "I'm not just tired, I'm not just overwhelmed. Something in me is giving out." And by the time I knew I needed that kind of honesty, I was already so practiced in concealment that openness felt dangerous. It is frightening how long a person can live disconnected from her own breaking. You keep thinking you'll rest after this week, you'll reset after this month, you'll get yourself back after this season. But seasons have a way of stacking, especially when you are the kind of woman who keeps functioning no matter what. One hard season becomes 2, then 5, then 10. And because you never fully stop, you never fully hear what your soul has been trying to say. You just keep translating pain into productivity and hope the system somehow repairs itself. Mine didn't, not on its own, because systems built on denial rarely self-heal. They simply continue until the cost becomes too obvious to ignore. For me, that cost showed up as emotional numbness, resentment, exhaustion, and a strange grief I could not quite explain. I was grieving a version of myself I had been losing in slow motion, a softer version, a freer version, a more alive version, a woman who laughed more easily, rested more cleanly, felt more honestly, and did not have to smile so much to keep the world around her calm. What changed me was not one perfect moment of clarity. It was the gradual realization that no one was coming to rescue the parts of me I kept hiding. If I wanted to be seen, I would have to become more visible. If I wanted help, I would have to stop packaging my pain so neatly. If I wanted a life that felt more real, I would have to stop making myself look okay for everyone else's comfort. That was terrifying, because once a woman stops smiling through everything, she risks being misunderstood. She risks being called distant, difficult, dramatic, changed. She risks unsettling people who preferred her strong. But I can tell you this now. Being misunderstood while telling the truth is still healthier than being admired while slowly breaking in silence. If I could speak to my younger self, I would tell her not to wait until her pain is unbearable before she becomes honest. I would tell her that the first sign of breaking deserves attention, not performance. I would tell her that smiling is not healing, that competence is not wholeness, that being able to carry a lot does not mean you should carry it alone. I would tell her that the world may reward her for being steady, but that does not mean she must keep bleeding quietly to maintain the reward. I would tell her to let the right people see the truth sooner, to stop reducing her pain to something polite, to stop acting as though her ability to function means she is fine. I would tell her that there is nothing noble about becoming invisible to yourself in order to remain comfortable to others. I would tell her that some of the strongest words in the world are not, "I've got it." Sometimes the strongest words are, "I can't keep doing this the same way." Sometimes strength is not the smile. Sometimes strength is the truth underneath it. I smiled through everything, and nobody saw me breaking. That sentence hurts because it tells the truth about how loneliness can live behind a pleasant face for years. But maybe it can still do some good if someone hears it in time. If that someone is you, then let me say this clearly. If your smile has become armor, put it down somewhere safe. If your kindness has become camouflage, take it off for a moment. If your strength has become the reason no one checks on you, tell the truth before your silence convinces everyone, including you, that there is nothing to see. There is something to see. There is someone to care for. And she is not weak for needing to stop smiling long enough to be real.